Spring-heeled Jack is an entity in English folklore of the Victorian era. The first claimed sighting of spring-heeled Jack was in 1837. Later sightings were reported all over Great Britain and were especially prevalent in suburban London, the Midlands and Scotland. There are many theories about the nature and identity of spring-heeled Jack. He was described by people who claimed to have seen him as having a terrifying and frightful appearance, with clawed hands and eyes that resembled red balls of fire. He wore a black cloak, a helmet, and a tight-fitting white garment like oilskin. Many stories also mention a devil-like aspect. Some said he was tall and thin, with the appearance of a gentleman. Several reports mention he could breathe out blue and white flames and that he wore sharp metallic claws at his fingertips. At least 2 people claimed that he was able to speak comprehensible English. The first reported sightings were named the Hammersmith Ghost in 1803 and 1804 in Hammersmith on the western fringes of London. He would later appear in 1824. This particular spirit bore many of the characteristics of spring-heeled Jack and was reported as jumping over houses and being over 10 foot tall. In 1837, in Liverpool and London, more sightings of spring-heeled Jack were said to have occurred. In October of that year, a girl by the name of Mary Stevens was walking to Lavender Hill, where she worked as a servant, after visiting her parents in Battersea. On her way through the park, a strange figure leapt at her from a dark alley. After immobilizing her with a tight grip of her arms, he began to kiss her face while ripping her clothes and touching her flesh with his claws, which were, according to her deposition, cold and clammy as those of a corpse. In panic, the girl screamed, making her attacker quickly flee from the scene. The commotion brought out the residents, who immediately launched a search for the aggressor, but he could not be found. A few months after all of these sightings, the Lord Mayor of London held a public session in his mansion house. Although the Lord Mayor seemed fairly skeptical, a member of the audience confirmed that several servant girls around London are telling dreadful stories of this ghost or devil. The Lord Mayor himself was in 2 minds about the affair. He thought the greatest exaggerations had been made, and it was quite impossible that this ghost performs the feats of a devil upon earth. Perhaps the best known of the alleged incidents involving spring-heeled Jack were the attacks on 2 teenage girls, Lucy Scales and Jane Alsop. The Alsop report was widely covered by the newspapers, including a piece in the Times. In the beginning of the 1870s, spring-heeled Jack was reported again in several places distant from each other. In November 1872, the News of the World reported that Peckham was in a state of commotion owing to what is known as the Peckham Ghost, a mysterious figure quite alarming in appearance. Locals came to identify this figure as spring-heeled Jack. The vast urban legend built around spring-heeled Jack influenced many aspects of Victorian life, especially in contemporary popular culture. For decades, especially in London, his name was equated with a bogeyman, as a means of scaring children into behaving by telling them if they were not good, spring-heeled Jack would leap up and peer in through them through their bedroom windows by night. Some paranormal explanations were proposed to explain the origin of spring-heeled Jack, including that he was an extraterrestrial entity with a non-human appearance and features like reflective red eyes or phosphorus breath, and a superhuman agility deriving from life on a high-gravity world with his jumping ability and strange behavior, or that he was a demon accidentally or purposefully summoned into this world by practitioners of the occult. Victims reported being pinned or paralyzed, and commonly experienced their attack in their bedrooms, homes, or seemingly secure enclosures. Some tried to explain these psychologically, most notably as in the old hag phenomenon, recorded in folklore and recognized by psychologists as a form of hallucination. In most problematic cases, an attack is witnessed by several people and substantiated by some physical evidence, but the attacker cannot be verified to exist. Because of the parallels of this character to the methods used by the Whitechapel murderer of 1888, Spring-Heeled Jack is seen as being the inspiration behind the invention of the name Jack the Ripper. Spring-Heeled Jack has vague real origins of an attacker of women whose identity was never known. Over a period of nearly 70 years, a leaping madman startled and attacked young women. His attacks were reported in the local and national press. There are many similarities between Spring-Heeled Jack and the later, all-too-real murderous rampage of Jack the Ripper. Both individuals targeted women, although Spring-Heeled Jack's victims were from fairly respectable backgrounds. He left them shaken but alive, while the Rippers were famously prostitutes who ended up dead and horribly mutilated. Both Jacks seem to have been very active for short periods before disappearing, although in the case of the Ripper, perhaps mercifully, he never reappeared again. Spring-Heeled Jack was last seen in 1904 at Everton in Liverpool, bounding up and down the streets, leaping from cobbles to rooftops and back. He vanished into the darkness when some brave soul tried to corner him, and he has not been seen since to this day. So the puzzle remains. Who was Spring-Heeled Jack? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.